You know, I do feel bad for this guy. Kind of, in a way. Because sometimes when you are getting tarnished on social media like this guy has been the past 24 hours or so, sometimes when you're in the spot, it's not even really your fault. In fact, you didn't even have anything to do with it. Today what we're doing is going over to a conversation responding to the discourse from the NHL's own Twitter page. Now, if you've been following the NHL's page, they have been posting their fantasy hockey ratings and summaries for a bunch of different guys over the past few days. There is the NHL fantasy projected point totals for some of the players, and they ask, oh, is this guy going to get more or fewer points than the projections, and yada yada yada. You know how fantasy works, it's fantasy. Somebody call Ryan Reynolds and Jodie Comer. But in this video, what I wanted to do was go over the latest fantasy hockey rating, because it goes over Shane Wright of the Seattle Kraken. Will 24-25 be a breakout year for Wright? The question asks. The NHL's fantasy projected point total for Shane Wright for 2024-2025 is 48 points. They ask, will he go over or under? And you can see his career point totals being illustrated at the bottom. In 22-23, Shane Wright had 2 points. In 23-24, Shane Wright had 5 points. All in the NHL. This doesn't include AHL, OHL, World Junior Production. The question is he going to get more or less than 48? And as innocuous of a post as this is, it's literally just the NHL tweeting about the fantasy projections of a guy. You have all the replies, all the quote tweets, all of the people responding to this by talking about how Shane Wright may or may not be as great as we thought he was going to be 2 years ago when he was drafted. Now, I think the majority of people who are watching this YouTube video, especially if you're a Montreal Canadiens fan, the majority of y'all remember exactly what happened in 2022. Shane Wright was the consensus projected first overall pick for the entire season, and the question was, Wright or Slavkovsky, who's going number 1? Well, Slavkovsky ended up going number 1, and Shane Wright, instead of going number 2, he slipped down to number 4. New Jersey passed on Wright at number 2 because they needed a right-handed D-man, and they didn't need another center after drafting Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier. The third overall Arizona Coyotes just went with Cooley over Wright because they invested more time into Cooley. They recognized that this was a guy that they put so much of their scouting services towards that they just kind of felt comfortable taking him over Wright, and to be fair, I think the decision is paying off in spades right now. Shane Wright, on the other hand, is coming off of a pretty successful season in the AHL, and we had made the videos already talking about how Wright is kind of coming back up here, and he's looking good, and he was producing, and he had the really good season last year, honestly. Like, his 2022-2023 was very unorthodox, but it wasn't a bad year. He was all over the place, but he still found ways to produce. And ultimately, when you think about the projections, honestly, like, 48 might even be a bit generous for a guy who's only scored 7 points in the NHL his entire career to project a 48-point season next year after the signing of Chandler Stevenson in Seattle. It does become a bit of a question mark as to where the Shane Wright point production metrics will go in 2024-2025. But the reason we're making this video is not necessarily because of the fantasy projection itself. Okay, 48 points, whatever it is, that's fine and dandy. But it gets even crazier when you acknowledge what fans are saying in response to the Shane Wright fantasy summary. This tweet, made by Talk Canadiens, was kind of going viral too. 48 points is the new bar for a generational talent? And included is a 9-second interview clip of Shane Wright from before the 2022 draft, where Shane Wright says into the microphone, "I still feel like I'm the player that I should be. I can still be that generational talent." And, okay. Yeah, you can start to understand why people are clowning on Shane Wright now. That's a very big thing to label yourself as. A generational talent. You know how many generational Canadian talents there have been in the NHL? I mean, look, you go to Bedard, you go to McDavid, you go to Crosby, you go to Lindros, Super Mario, Guy Lafleur, Gretzky, and Bobby Orr? What is that? I think that's the list, right, of Canadian prodigies? Shane Wright, labeling himself as a generational talent. Oh boy, I don't know if that's gonna go over well, because now he's getting clowned on by the media. The fans are bringing up this interview and saying stuff like this in the replies. This made me laugh way harder than it should have. They did him so dirty by adding the point production of 2 and 5 points from the past 2 seasons. Now, if you wanted my opinions as to the point production itself, do I think Shane Wright is going to burst onto the scene in his rookie NHL year and get under or over 48 points? I gotta say under. I mean, I don't know necessarily if the production that he had in the AHL, which was good, like, I don't want to discredit what Shane Wright did with the Coachella Valley Firebirds this recent season. I mean, he scored 47 points in 59 games, almost a point per game guy, and already a point per game guy in the playoffs. He had a pretty good cup of coffee with the Kraken too. He had 5 points, yes, but only in 8 games. He's good, and I do think there is a world where he does get over 48 points. But considering the Seattle Kraken and their lines and what they have with Matty Beniers and Chandler Stevenson as their top 2 centers, and how there might not be a spot for Shane Wright to get immediate significant minutes, I mean, if I would bet on this, which I won't, I'm not really a betting man, but if I was, I think it'd probably be safer to bet the under here. Unless, of course, Shane Wright gets placed on the wing with Beniers and McCann or whatever. He gets the right wing spot, he plays on the first or second line, and he gets first power play time. If he's there, then okay. Like, in that role, he can do whatever he wants on offense, he'll be free, and he'll be able to produce a bunch of points. But if he's playing with Ty Karche on the fourth line, sorry Shane Wright, but you're not getting even close to like 40 points, really. So it's going to depend on playing time, it's going to depend on where the Kraken decide to put him. He already proved to most of us earlier on that he can produce at the NHL level. Now he's just got to do it for an extended period of time. So with all this in mind, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about Shane Wright and his overall production. What are your thoughts on 48 being the benchmark here? Does he hit the over? Does he hit the under? And what are your thoughts on Habs fans and other NHL fans, but mostly Habs fans, clowning on Shane Wright because of the comments he had made a few years ago, calling himself a generational talent? From a generational talent to a 48-point projected player at 20 years old in his rookie NHL season. How crazy is that? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. If you're a Canadiens fan, a Kraken fan, or you're a fan of any other team, what are your thoughts on the way Shane Wright has been performing, and what are your thoughts on how he will perform into 2024-2025, and if there even is a spot for him to excel to get those 48 points? Thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.